That was great, Diana. Thank you very much. I had just shared with her that usually by this time I am maybe changing a word or two in my talk, but this morning I'm still crossing out whole paragraphs. It was just one of those weeks. Because the topic is the courage to do the right thing. Now, it's an odd thing since you already know what's right for you. But I'd like to share with you some guidelines to take the rough edges off of life. And it begins thousands of years ago with the people of the Toltec Nation in southern Mexico. They were called women and men of knowledge. They became scientists and artists, and they practiced spiritual practices, and they gained a lot in self-mastery. They preserved their spiritual knowledge even when the Europeans came to this continent through their families for generations, passing this information down. And if you haven't read the Four Agreements, it's a real great book to read by Don Miguel Ruiz and his son Don Jose Ruiz. They have been sharing the Toltec knowledge for many years now, and when I came upon it through the Four Agreements, it really shook me because I thought I was being really authentic. But he says, if you live the Four Agreements, you will blow past your limiting beliefs, the beliefs that you have about yourself, and you will live in a more authentic life. How many of you have read the Four Agreements? Oh, wonderful. Oh, this will be a piece of cake. Because the first one is to be impeccable with your word. The second is not to take anything personally. Now, that's a good one, isn't it? The third one is don't make assumptions. And we're just inclined to do that quite often. And the fourth one is always do your best. So in my mind, if we really do these things, we will retain our sanity in the world today. I guarantee you that. So then I looked in this past week and I thought, well, how have I done this past week on the Four Agreements? Well, life's complicated. What Don Miguel says is, from the moment we're born, we're surrounded by symbols. We're surrounded by what it means to have a mom. We're surrounded by, our clothing. Our clothing speaks a lot. We're surrounded by how we do our hair. This morning it's a little humid, so it looks a little different. And how we wear our clothing and our cars. And I was thinking, if we all went out into the parking lot this morning and looked at all these cars and made a judgment and assumption about the owner and their personality and who they are and how they live, and, well, we do that, don't we? Me, I drive a Toyota Highlander. I carry a lot of Shoes for Souls around in the back of that truck and a lot of food donations to the various food banks. But the Toyota Highlander tells something about me and who I am. Well, we also have other symbols, like if you haven't noticed, Sue and I like to wear comfortable shoes. And I know you know that, and you may not think much of it, but if I walked in here with 4-inch spike heels, you would go, what is she doing? What is she trying to say to us? What's going on with her? And you'd probably say, Mary, you ought to go see a practitioner. But these symbols that we offer the world are who we think we are, but we're the only people that believe it because we think it's so. We, as ministers, know the truth about you. Like the Toltecs, we are beginning to understand the human mind because they did. They believed that God was the ultimate creator, and each one of them were recreators based on what they held in their thoughts and beliefs, based on their mind. And they created their lives from what they perceived and believed was right for them. And they called this self-mastery. I love that word, self-mastery. It's a process that they believed would take them out of any area of suffering and return them to their true nature, which they believed was happiness, freedom, and love. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Because you fast forward a few thousand years and here we are, and we believe God is the creator, that infinite intelligence that has created each one of us to live here and to find our way to the truth of our own nature, which is happiness, freedom, and love. So, in my last talk, I referenced Ernest Holmes' book, This Thing Called You, and there are 3 copies in the bookstore now. And he says on page 23, life is what we individually make of it. We have self-determination. On page 52, he says, nothing rewards or punishes us except the law of cause and effect. What we call right thinking is knowing good is the only power there is. Only good is the only power there is. On page 57, there's a perfect pattern at the center of everything. Everything. Page 58, the law can only operate on my images of my thought and beliefs. Since the law is the doer and it listens to me and it acts and reacts based on my beliefs. So it's important to keep our beliefs and our thoughts clear, to think good of people. It's really an awareness of what is real versus what he calls virtual reality. I think of virtual reality as wearing a headset and seeing something entirely different, but he calls virtual reality what we're seeing. Because what is real can't be changed, but what is virtual reality can be changed by us with the identification of symbols. So the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. So when I talk to you or you talk to me, the words we used are based on our assumptions of what we want to hear from each other. If you heard something totally opposite of what you expected from me, you would really question where my mind was. So our words to each other are often couched in that, and that is virtual reality. It's not the truth, because otherwise I would just say namaste to you all the time. To be impeccable with our word means never using this power of our word against ourselves. You might have thought I was going to say against someone else, but it's against ourselves. Because our words are packets of energy, they have power. We can hurt people with our words. We can love people with our words. So he says, never use your words to spread emotional poison. Now, I like those 2 words, emotional poison, because it denigrates somebody else's beliefs. You know, it's never been more important than it is today, I believe, because without thinking, we can often pass on poisonous emotional words like we hear in the news. A lot of poison out there. Jesus said it's done unto us as we believe. So why would we pass on emotionally poisonous words? Why would we do that? I was watching some children as I was driving in, and I was thinking that they watch adults to figure out how adults deal with virtual reality. This is how they learn. And sometimes they learn from our negativity and our judgments about others, about politics, about the world, about everything. And we know that most of our opinions aren't true because we know we are individual souls on this loving adventure supported by the power and the nature of God. Do children know that? Or do they listen to us? Do they listen to our words, our emotions, our negativity? Because the truth is, there's one infinite intelligence that created the universe out of itself. We as individual souls have the choice, the capacity to live in alignment with that, with the loving nature of the one. We believe in the law of cause and effect, that the law accepts the seeds that we plant with our words and our thoughts. We water them with our most dominant beliefs and opinions. We are watering our seeds. And then they manifest in our life experience. So look around you this week. This life experience of yours has been created along the way from when you were little and thought, what makes the best mom? This is a good mom, I know, because that mom is mine. What makes a good teacher? What makes a good friend? What makes a good partner. It's a soul's journey. And if we want to improve our life experience right now, we have to plant and water new seeds. We have to grow a new garden. And with the 4 agreements, it's a good way to start. You know, fear envelops the lives of millions of people around the world today. And recently, a commentator on the news said that ISIS fighters do not have the capacity to absorb love. They do not have the capacity to absorb love. So there is no touchstone for them on good and bad. And I thought, how do you learn to absorb love? Well, you learn it from mothering. You learn it from people who give you a hug. You learn it from others who can give that special power to you to feel love. I can't imagine life without love, can you? It would just be like a wasteland. But if you're feeling serious sadness or pain, it's time to expand your awareness, because it's not worth spending your precious time here on earth spreading emotional poison, even if you think it's innocent. People listen. Children listen. Quite often, if someone comes to see me and they have adult children that are being dysfunctional, this is what I tell them. That child is not your child. That is an individual soul on this spiritual path. They have the ability to connect with the infinite intelligence of the universe. They have that ability. And if you know that for them, you've opened up space for them to realize it. Because you're opening up space for them to think differently, not harping on them that they're dysfunctional. You open up space. And I even encourage people, tell them, I know within you is the power to improve your life, to do what's right. There is that power within. And I honor you that it's at the right point in time, you will get that. It helps the parents, but it sure helps the dysfunctional children who don't have to prove they're dysfunctional anymore. They don't have to wear those symbols. They don't have to portray that. The second agreement, because the first one we can go on and on and on. The second agreement is don't take things personally. So imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. The mirror is reflecting virtual reality. The mirror is not reflecting you, the soul. It's the virtual reality. So whatever people think about this, it's their image of who they think we are. And whatever we are showing people is our image of who we think we are. And it's really hard to argue with opinions like that because we know it's not the truth. You know, recently Reverend David took the senior minister position in Olympia, Washington, and he was so excited. And if you've been following his Facebook, he's having the time of his life. One of the reasons he's having the time of his life is that the board there at CSL Olympia handles all the administrative work. All he has to do is what he loves to do, is ministerial teaching and talking, being practitioner and minister. We were so happy for him because he found his niche and the people that had the capacity and the ability to surround him and take care of everything else. But since the day he announced that he was leaving, Sue and I heard rumors like, well, they ran off another minister. They don't like male ministers, do they? They must have asked him to leave, but I bet they set him up to fail. And you know, when we heard these things, we're like, where in the hell did that come from? Pardon me. Because if we had that in our consciousness, I wouldn't have the courage to stand up here and talk with you. I'd be cowering in some corner somewhere. And Sue and I looked at each other the other day. She said, I heard another good one. And we go, what do you do with that? It's just someone's opinion. We can't take it personally because it's someone's opinion. And if we would have brought any of those things into effect, we wouldn't be following this teaching. So we keep doing what we're doing and loving you and talking our talks and teaching our teaching and walking the walk, and And that's what we do, regardless of what people say. We have to be true to ourselves. So if there's some place in your life where someone's opinion has hurt you, I encourage you to see Chris and Diana and ask about the big T, the big truth about you. Sticks and stones don't break bones. No, that's not right, is it? Sticks and stones break bones, but words will never hurt you. And that's the truth. It's important to remember that. Gosh, that's from childhood. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. Now, Don Miguel says when we make an assumption, we're headed for trouble. Big T trouble. Because assumptions are not the truth. They're not the truth. We watch the news and all these wild stories, all these crazy stories. Whole dramas created out of assumptions with no basis in anything. And yet, news program after news program will pick that up, go, ooh, that sounds juicy. Doesn't matter what's behind it. So these assumptions can create drama where there really isn't any. Now, maybe somebody just needs to be high dramaed up for the day. I don't know. You know, when you're going to meet someone for lunch and they don't show up, or they show up really, really late, your mind starts tripping on, oh dear, what happened, what happened, what happened? And we can get all worked up. And there was a traffic jam. When Paul and I worked for large corporations, we often would have to go out to lunch with members of the opposite sex. And people would, minds chatter and create pure torture. So the truth is everything's unfolding perfectly. Our soul's on this evolutionary journey back to our true nature, and we're all learning to get along with each other. We're all learning to love one another and know what it means to love one another. And when we do that for children, it gives them space, as I said, to do their best. You know, driving around Reading, you can see a lot of people walking the streets. Vincent, I see him often walking around town. And you know, often our minds will make an assumption. I know this soul. He's a wonderful man. He's here, like all of us are, to awaken to our true nature. It's a real gift that we give people. So when you see people walking the streets and your mind wants to go, oh, them, think, oh, them, souls on their journey back to the one. Believe in their good. And the fourth agreement is always do your best. Now, doing your best, no more, no less, but it doesn't always mean you're at 100% capacity to do your best, to achieve what you might think is the best, but it's what can I do right now that is the best I can do right now. Do the best you can without sacrificing yourself for someone else. Often we think that we have to go overboard to please someone else. The only person we have to please is ourselves. Did I do my best for how I feel, how I'm living, what other expectations are of me? Now, over the past couple of years, several of our members have had to downsize their living environments, move into retirement homes or assisted living, and some of them have made their transition. And many people joined together to take all of their belongings that are no longer needed to new locations, to new owners, to find new homes for furniture, and hundreds and hundreds of books. Hundreds, and we're all good about that, books. These services have been a huge benefit to the families, especially those that live out of state. They are so extremely grateful. Now, not all of us could participate every day. We could do what we could do. We did our best. And then after it's all done, after everything's been settled down, we know as a family, as a community, we've done really good for the world. And we did the best we could. So those are the 4 agreements, but Don Miguel put out a new book called The Fifth Agreement. And I thought, how can you get better than that? Well, here's the 5th agreement, and we'll see if you agree. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. Wow, that's different. Be skeptical. You wouldn't expect to hear that. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. And I think this is the most important agreement for June 2017, for all that we're bombarded with every day. Be skeptical, because most of what we hear isn't true. Somebody's opinion or assumption, somebody's judgment. Understand the symbols behind those communications. What are they really trying to say? How can we get clear if we care? How can we get clear about what they're saying? So being skeptical gets us to sit back just a minute and see if we can figure that out. What is really being communicated? Is it really true, or is it just somebody's assumption? When we put our energy into somebody else's beliefs, we can get tripped up. We want to be on the path of life mastery, being the masters of our life. But that means to let go of that warrior energy that always wants to fight or send out poisonous ideas and words, and time to embrace the truth. So when you come to a practitioner like Chris and Diana, I highly recommend them this morning, they're going to hear your personal story. They're going to see your symbols, and they're not going to criticize it at all. They know that's your virtual world. They will listen. They will respect you. They will honor you. But then they're going to share universal principles of truth. Just share them and invite you to think about them, invite you to play with them, to experiment with them, to try them on for size. Because we know as practitioners and ministers, we can't tell you something and expect you to do it or experience it. You have to do it yourself. You have to experience it yourself. You have to find out what is true for yourself. So right now, everybody raise your hands and wiggle your fingers. Almost everyone's doing that. What made that happen? I asked you to. And your intent was to respond. That's a safe thing to do. I can wiggle my fingers in church. It was the intent of responding. That's power. That's your individual power, your power to respond. You could have resisted and said, no way. You could have gotten up and walked out. This energy, this power that you have manifests in thousands of ways every day. Every day, even wiggling your fingers. Paul said the other day, I was reading a book and I was wiggling my toes. He said, that book must be good. I went, I didn't even know I was doing that. He thought, that must be a juicy book. No, it wasn't. Ken Wilber, The Religion of the Future. I'm wiggling my toes. I don't know. Oh. And you know, 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, you will know the truth and this truth will set you free. And what is truth and what is freedom? Well, freedom is letting go of the distortions in our system, in our belief system. Freedom is letting go of high drama. Freedom is letting go of guilt, shame. Freedom is letting go of the story of your hurts. Letting go. So at the end of his book, Don Miguel invites us to participate in a new dream for humanity, where we can live in harmony, truth, and love. And the only way to do that is change our virtual world to match the truth about our oneness with God. It means finding a place where we don't take things personally, where we honor our words, where we're skeptical. That grace just spreads so fast before us. And my spiritual guide, Yoda, always says, there is no try, do or do not. Sooner or later, our bodies will no longer exist, but our soul will go on with these beliefs, with these principles. So if we make greater agreements with ourselves, love, happiness, joy, that will perpetuate as we move on the soul's journey. So I'd like to leave you with a reading from this thing called you, from page 140. I know my search is over. I am consciously aware of the presence of spirit. I have discovered the great reality. I am awake to the realization of the presence that there is but one life. Today I see it reflected in every form, back of every countenance, moving through every act. knowing that the divine presence is in everyone I meet, the Spirit in all people, I salute the good in everyone. I recognize God responds to me and to every person I meet. I feel the warmth of this divine presence forever pressing against me. Ooh, that feels good. Welling up within me, the wellspring of eternal being present yesterday, today, tomorrow, and always. Thank you, Spirit, for the wisdom of the ages that opens my mind to the greatest gift of all, being an individual expression of the One. And may I add, for Sue and I, sharing this life with all of you. And so it is. Diana? Thank you.